With over 65 years worth of material, the Godzilla franchise is massive, with currently 35 films in total, not including all the movies which tie into the universe overall. But let's have a look at my personal rankings of them, because there's some really good movies in this franchise, and there's also some truly dreadful ones. So, throughout this video, I'm going to be looking at 5 different points of contention for the way that I rank the movies. Number 1, most importantly, is how much I personally enjoy the film. It could be absolutely atrocious to critics and from a production value. If I personally enjoy it, it'll be higher up on the list. Number 2, characters. If a film has really bad characters, which are pretty much the ones that are in my bottom 5, then I can't rank them any higher. There's just no other way. If it got to a point where the characters themselves maybe want to turn off the film, even if the kaiju action's awesome, there's no point putting them any higher than this. Number 3 is production value. Now this one, it doesn't matter what year it came out. If it was good for that year, then I'll rate it as highly as I would, for example, King of the Monsters, amazing CGI work. If it looked amazing back then, I don't really care if it doesn't look as amazing now. It's just how it looks at the time. Number 4, and this is one that's going to be a little bit controversial, continuity. For me, continuity is a massive thing, and I just love seeing how movies connect together, so a lot of the Heisei films will get a little bit more of an edge up compared to others, but also the Kiryu saga will also do quite well as some of the earlier Godzilla films, such as Godzilla, Godzilla Raids Again, etc. And 5th and foremost is the actual monsters themselves. If it's a really terrible movie but introduces some great monsters, it will not be in the bottom 5. That kind of idea is what I'm going to be going with. So, without further ado, let's go through them all, starting off at number 35. Now, I've seen fans defend this movie, and I can occasionally see where they're coming from, but oh my god, Godzilla vs. Megalon. It is literally about 75 minutes long for the English cut. 15 minutes of it, for the action sequences, is stock footage of previous movies. Now, I'm not sure if it's actually 15 minutes in total, but that's what it bloody felt like. This movie is dreadful. The characters are appalling. The special effects, like previous 60s Godzilla movies, have better special effects than this for what was actually new, since most of it was just reused from previous movies, especially when Megalon's attacking Tokyo or whatever it is, I can't fully remember. But it's Gigan footage, and you can see Gigan's claws, which are very different to Megalon's. Oh, it's so bad. I hate this one so much. It is, in my opinion, the worst Godzilla film, which is why I've ranked it at number 35. Now, All Monsters Attack, I don't like this movie at all. I think it's bland, I think it's repetitive. It has the same issues Godzilla vs. Megalon has with the drastic amount of stock footage. But the reason why this is not at the bottom of the list, which is the film that's probably at most people's bottom, is just because for a kid's Godzilla film, it could have been that little bit worse. I didn't despise this movie. I hated it. But I think at one point, if I got drunk and I watched it again, I'd probably love it for just how shit, cheap and cheesy it is. And it has got a couple of merits. Those 10-second segments where Manila gets hit in the face. Best parts of the movie. So my issue with Godzilla Raids Again is, obviously I'm doing the English cut version for this, so it's Gigantus Fire Monster, but I really just didn't enjoy this. The production values are quite good, I will state that, but everything else, the characters, I couldn't give a single flip about. Like, I couldn't give a single fuck. Not even the slightest bit. They were all horrifically written. The movie was rushed to hell. Some of the special effects, even though it is good, they look worse somehow than the previous film, but the entire reason why this isn't, like, the bottom of the list, because it would be otherwise, it introduces Anguirus, who is still to this day one of my favourite monsters of all time, and I'm so upset that he's not in more movies and doesn't get more recognition, because Anguirus is awesome, and he's Godzilla's best friend. What's not to love with him? Roland Emmerich's Godzilla. There's so much you can say about this movie, but yet there's nothing you can say at the same time. Now, I will state, when I was a kid, I adored this movie, and if it wasn't for this film, I would have never got into the Godzilla franchise to begin with. But that does not excuse the fact that it's one of the worst written Godzilla films, probably ever kaiju films ever. There's an entire part in the film, which is when I rewatched it, because I was quite enjoying the first 20 minutes, and then there was this shot of Totopoulos' girlfriend looking at, above the camera for 10 seconds after saying, "He was my college sweetie," and it's a single shot. It doesn't move from staring at her face for 10 whole seconds, and that's when I realised what kind of movie this actually was. It was a Roland Emmerich Drek film. Something that I normally don't say because I do like some of his movies, but my god, did they fucking drop the ball on this one. I don't even mind Zilla's design. I quite like Zilla as a separate thing as long as it's not Godzilla. But even if this film wasn't a Godzilla movie and never advertised a Godzilla movie, I don't think it would still be received very well. So the first part of the anime trilogy is a massive letdown. I'll state right now, I'm not the biggest fan of anime. I don't like the style of animation at all. It's never appealed to me. But I was intrigued at the idea of a Godzilla anime because there's so much more you can do through animation compared through CGI and compared through practical effects. But this movie is so disappointing. The first hour just sets up the trilogy and does nothing else. It doesn't even introduce you to the characters very well. I still to this day, after watching all three films twice, can't tell you most of the characters' names. That's how forgettable they are throughout this trilogy. But the idea is really ambitious, and I liked how ambitious it was. And the second half of it got a lot less boring when they actually landed on Earth, and it got a lot better. Still not good, but better. That's why it's not the bottom. Now, the only reason why this movie is not in the bottom 5 is because it introduces Kumonga, who is literally my third favourite kaiju of all time. It's just a giant spider. What's not to love if you love spiders like I do? Kumonga's great, but everything else about this movie sucks. And oh my god, Manila is the worst creation to ever come from any movie. And I hate Manila so much. I hate it. The little shit with his little whines and constant crying. The best part of this film is generally when he gets hit in the face, and that's as much as I need to say about this film. Now, Godzilla vs. Gigan, I don't actually hate. I just don't even really dislike it. I feel very neutral about it. The film's okay, but that's as much as I can say. I can't praise it for many things. I can't criticise it for many things. It was an interesting concept for the Godzilla Tower and introducing Gigan and working with King Ghidorah. And Gigan's great, I'll state that much. I like Gigan. I think he's an awesome kaiju. He's just sadly not been in any truly remarkable films, which is a bit unfair on him, but yeah, this film's just slap bang Godzilla average, and that's as much as I can say. Now, this one's going to be controversial. I don't like Destroy All Monsters. I think it's just a retread of Astro Monster, which I'm also not a fan of, but a little bit worse. I will state that the kaiju scenes are awesome, and it's very clear to me that the budget for the film wasn't the highest, which is why they focused a lot more on the human side for this film. But if your budget's not that high, why make it? Or just make it as a short film? Because the film in its current length is very slow, very boring, and only got 2 really good sequences. And one sequence, with Godzilla battling Manda for a few shots, was cut for some reason. Why? I also love Manda. What the fuck? No, Destroy All Monsters is a massive letdown in my opinion, but I do understand why fans enjoy it for the sequences, which are great, and I completely respect that. It's just, for me, just didn't work. Oh god, people are gonna hate me because now he's Astro Monster. I'm not the biggest fan of this film. It's too much of a sci-fi film for me. This is when the Showa series started to lose me a little bit, when they started to get a bit too over the top, a bit too sci-fi, and a bit too melodramatic with the characters, who I will state are very well written. They're just not given much to do in the plot. I find them trying really hard to be great, but there's nothing they can do. It's similar to how Doctor Who is at the moment. Amazing casting, but not much material to work with, and that's my biggest issue with this film. It's very slow, but I will state that it does have the biggest positive for at least trying to keep the Godzilla franchise fresh, keep it new, and if it's just focusing on that, the film did really well at what it wanted to achieve. So that's why I can't rank it any lower than this, but I also can't rank it any higher because the rest of these films are, in my opinion, a bit better. Godzilla 2000 fucking letdown. After hearing fans for so long say that this is a great way to ignore Godzilla 1998, Godzilla's in it for like 10 minutes. I know that's something that would ironically become a running trend with this franchise, especially for Godzilla 2014 and stuff, but come on, there's not even a proper city destruction scene in this movie, and if there is, I probably zoned out to it because of how bored I got. The CGI in this movie is awful, even for like 1999. This is bad green screen, there's no other way to say it, but it does have some positives. I love the new Godzilla design, for instance, it's great. The overall human plot actually wasn't boring, which is already leagues above Godzilla 1998, and I will state that. I wasn't bored with this movie, I was just really disappointed, and I really don't understand the really positive fan reception to it. I just don't get it. It just didn't work for me, although Godzilla's new design was amazing. Now, Ibira Horror of the Deep's one of those weird films. I honestly love this. If I was going to rank them just set only on my personal opinion of love for them, this would be in the top 10 because it's so cheap, it's so shit, it's so damn cheesy. I can't help but love it. It's one of those movies which very clearly is so bad it's good. It's so clear how much Toho stripped for budget limb from this movie, and that's why I like it, because it's so basic, it's so crap. I love it, but I cannot rank it any higher than this, because even giving it number 25 is probably too high for this movie, because it is awful, but it's so awful I can't help but adore it. Now, for the first Heisei film in this ranking video, it has to be Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, just for the very simple fact it's a bit of a letdown. Not a bad film at all. I actually really liked a lot of the sci-fi elements introduced, a lot of the futuristic elements introduced in this that would sort of continue throughout the rest of the Heisei era, but it's just a bit confusing. I know that there is explanations for how it works, but in the film itself, they don't explain it. Like, they don't. They loosely try to explain it, and then it's like, oh no, kaiju action's happening. Let's cut away from explaining, the plot of this movie to go see kaiju fights. Also, there are a few time paradoxes in it, which normally I wouldn't criticise, but this movie was taking itself very seriously at times, in very odd ways. It was very self-aware, I will state that, and it was definitely trying to avoid the much darker tones of Return and Biollante, but because it stripped that out, which is one of the reasons why I love those two movies that much, it takes away a lot from it. I don't hate this film, I've watched it multiple times, I still enjoy it, but it is quite a letdown in the Heisei era. Back to the anime trilogy. Now, I enjoyed this one a lot more than the previous one, and it's only ranked this highly on the list because at least we got character development. For the actual film itself, it's pretty much carbon copy of the previous movie, but with a few minor changes. Mechagodzilla's design, I think, is awesome. It's just a shame that for most of the film we were stuck with Mechagodzilla City, but at least it actually made me care a little bit about the characters. The ending of this one was really damn good. The final sequences, especially compared to the previous movie, are miles better. It's just a shame that it was stuck with the same problems that the previous one had. Even though character development was a bit better, the characters still weren't very well defined. Once again, same animation style, which was quite jarring at times, but it is an improvement, and that's why it's this high on the list. Following on from the last one, we have the final part of the anime trilogy of Godzilla the Planet Eater. Now, I've seen a lot of people hate this one more than any of the others, but the entire reason for me why it's ranked this highly is because the new Ghidorah is fucking scary as hell. The dream sequences part, no, that's awful, I will state that. It is just padding the runtime, so it'll be able to hit like an hour and a half, I'll state that much, because it's just reused footage, slightly edited. that's about it. But Ghidorah himself is the most terrifying version of a character ever. The fact that he's non-dimensional and can affect our reality but we can't affect his is an awesome idea and a very good progression for the space monster himself. There's a lot to love about this movie and there's a lot to hate, but everything that's to hate about this film I've already mentioned in the last two ones, so we'll just move on. Now for the third Mechagodzilla styled film, I did like it, but I didn't think anything more of it. It's one of those movies which is, once again, a slap bang carbon copy. This is a Godzilla movie, just like Godzilla vs. Gigan. But the special effects are a bit better, and Kiryu is awesome. It's just a shame that everything else is just, oh, this is our Godzilla protagonist today. Oh, this is Godzilla. Oh, this is what Godzilla's gonna fight. It's quite a letdown. I do like the time when Kiryu starts wrecking shit when he turns evil, but everything else of this movie, it's the most carbon copy, slap bang average Godzilla I've ever seen. Now, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, I really like this one. I have no idea why, because it's not a good movie. But for some reason, I just can't help but enjoy this film. It's shit, it's cheesy, and my god, has it gone just so far away from what the Heisei era was meant to represent. And the fact this is a 40-year movie, it's appalling. But similar to Abira, it's one of those which is just so lost in its insanity, I have to love it. I mean, introducing Mickey having like a romantic partner for the film, and then he's never mentioned ever again, is one of my favourite parts. How much they tried to make this almost a romantic film for certain aspects, and it just didn't work, so they ignored it in the next movie. I love it, it's shit, and Space Godzilla's design itself is awesome. But once again, because it's one of those so bad it's good movies, I cannot rate it any higher than this. I just can't. So Godzilla Final Wars suffers a lot of the same problems that films such as Invasion of Astro Monsters and Destroy All Monsters had, focusing way too much on the bad human plot compared to the awesome kaiju sequences. But once again, I can understand it, and with this one at least, I do really enjoy just seeing Godzilla wreck everyone in like a matter of seconds. I know that it was kind of a cop-out, having so little actual screen time for monsters and him wrecking them so quickly. But for me, I liked it because it showed how OP this Godzilla was, and it was so much fun, so shit and cheesy, but exactly the same as the last entry. I cannot rate it any higher than this because it is shit, but it's one of the best shit movies I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, this one's going to be extremely controversial, but I honestly have never been the biggest fan of the original Gojira. I get how it created the franchise, but as a film on its own, it's extremely slow, and the human characters, apart from Dr. Serizawa, are appallingly written. I'm sorry, but the plot of this movie is bad. It's just really bad. The only reason I've ranked it even this high is the special effects for 1954 are absolutely incredible. There's no other way to say it. They're some of the best special effects, not including stop motion animation, that have ever been put to film. Like, especially for the budget of this movie, the time they had to make it, less than a year in total, I think it was. This is one of the greatest special effects movies ever made, and I'll never take that away. But I will say I would still rate the Americanized version lower than this if I included it on the list. So Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, I enjoyed this one. I liked a lot of the elements it tried to bring in for a lot of the weird sci-fi shit. My biggest problem with it is, once again, it felt a lot like just another Godzilla movie, and that's my biggest issue with the Millennium era. It's just, this is Godzilla movie. Thank you for money. It's boring, it doesn't really get the job done, but at the same time, I can't help but love this one because it's got some awesome sequences, I'll state that. And the idea of the black hole gun is really cool and really implemented quite well, something I wasn't expecting in this movie. And my god, did I enjoy it a damn sight more than Godzilla 2000 when I watched through the Millennium era all in one day. So, I do like this one, but once again, it's just a Godzilla movie. There's not much else to it. Speaking of the Millennium era, Godzilla Tokyo SOS. It's another Godzilla movie. I will state though, at least with this one, introducing all the other movies which have now been properly referenced, such as a Mothra film, which is a big part of this one. It's awesome, and I do like it, and it ties into a lot of the franchise's past, which is something I really enjoy for continuity-wise. And at least finally, in the Millennium era, we got a fucking sequel instead of a soft reboot or a direct sequel to the original. We got a proper sequel, which is why it's not rated any lower. I did enjoy this one. Mothra's scenes especially, I love Mothra. She is my favourite kaiju, no other way to say it. Sorry, guys. She is my favourite, always has been, always will be. Godzilla's number 2, by the way. But yeah, I love Mothra. So introducing her into this film and just improving everything that Godzilla x Mechagodzilla did makes it a lot better. I think this is the shittest Godzilla film ever made, and that is why I adore it. It's so low budget, oh my god, Kong's design is appalling, the characters are appalling, but so much fun to watch. It's like they knew that they wanted to make a comedic film, but Toho was telling them to not make it one, so they're like, okay, if we just write characters badly and make them say really self-aware funny lines, then we'll get away with it. This movie's so great because it did bring Godzilla back. It brought him back with a fucking bang with both the box office and with the film itself being so bad it's good, and really set up what I call the 60s quality trilogy did, which is King Kong vs Godzilla, Godzilla vs Mothra, and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Yeah, this is a great way to bring Godzilla back, and I love it. Now, speaking of Mothra, for this one, it's the 1992 version of Godzilla vs. Mothra. I like this movie a lot. I know a lot of fans don't because it's essentially half a Mothra remake, but that's why I enjoy it. The original Mothra is one of my favourite kaiju movies of all time, and seeing it get remade with Godzilla added to it and Batra, who is awesome as hell. I like this movie, and the Indiana Jones themes, it's just fun. It's shit, but it's fun. There's not much else to say about this movie. It's fun. It is like 100 minutes of just pure turn off your brain and watch it fun. There's not much else I can say. Up next is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which I originally ranked lower than Tokyo SOS, but after some thought I decided to change it, because this was a 20-year Godzilla movie, and it was basically there to try and save a dying franchise, and for what it did with, once again, a ridiculously low budget, is awesome. I love King Caesar. This version of Mechagodzilla is awesome. The final fight with Caesar, Godzilla, and Mechagodzilla is really fun and really great, and the human plot for this one isn't that bad. It's quite fun, and my god is it a step up compared to both Megalon and Gigan. Like, it's leagues above both of those. Like, there's no other way to say it. But the only real negatives of this film is it is very clearly just as low budget as Godzilla vs. Gigan, and sometimes it can distract a little bit in my opinion, but overall, great film, great way to try and revive a franchise. It's just a shame that it didn't connect enough with audiences, which is why the next film failed. Continuing the Mechagodzilla trend, apparently, is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, which is not the sequel to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, or Terror of Mechagodzilla. This is the sequel to Godzilla vs. Mothra. You get your head around it after you know timelines, but this film is great, and I just really enjoy it. There's no other way to say it. Introduces new Rodan, introduces brand new Manila, who's now Baby Godzilla, and my god is it much better than fucking Manila. I still hate that little crying fuck. Oh my god. No, this film's just a great way to bring back 3 classic kaiju, some of Toho's big 5, and the overall plot's really interesting. I like all the human characters in this film, which is something I do not say often for a Godzilla movie. It's something I don't even say for what I've ranked as number 2 for liking all the characters, but the reason why this one's ranked so low is just because sometimes it does get a little bit up itself, sometimes with the plot. It can get really slow at certain moments and you're just waiting for stuff to happen. I'd also like to state that the original fight between Godzilla and Mechagodzilla is a bit average. It looks pretty much shot for shot what we saw in the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. It's nothing new, it's nothing interesting, and Godzilla and Rodan's fight on the island isn't that great either, especially with how dirt cheap Rodan looks at times in this movie. But apart from that, this movie's great, and if you want to introduce someone to the Godzilla franchise, I'd honestly start off with this one, because it brings back so many elements of the past films altogether. It does it so well, and it's a very fun ride. Finally, to wrap up the Mechagodzilla trilogy is a controversial one. Number 11 is Terror of Mechagodzilla. I really enjoyed this movie. I have no idea why it has a bad reputation. I have no idea why it bombed at all. The human plot in this film is one of the darkest takes in the entire franchise and probably one of the best when it comes to emotional stuff. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Yeah, Titano, not the best kaiju ever, but still very enjoyable to see and a great design overall. And the sequence where him and Mechagodzilla 2 are just wrecking that harbour as Godzilla walks in, it's great. Honestly, in my opinion, I think this film would have been a lot better received if it was in the Heisei era instead of the Showa era. But I love this one. The only reason why it's not rated any higher is literally just because the quality of the next bunch of films, in my opinion, is a bit higher. That is the only reason why, or otherwise it would probably be my number one if these other movies were not made. For my top 10, I'm going to start off with GMK, which was literally the last Godzilla movie I watched, and wow, I'm so sad I left this so late, because this movie is brilliantly made. The characters are fun to actually watch throughout, with a mostly ensemble cast that kind of switches in and out bits and pieces before we settle on our main character. The overall production quality of this one is awesome. The CGI, once again, Millennium, it just has so many issues with its CGI, and this one suffers from it immensely, but it is a little bit better than the past two films, and arguably better than any of the other Millennium movies when it comes to their CGI. I love the fact that they changed Ghidorah's character to a protagonist. I know a lot of people hated it, and I can see why, but I think it's cool to see someone else interpret it as a completely different concept. The analogy about this film being all about the horrible things that Japan themselves did during the war, instead of the stuff that horrible things happened to Japan, which is also very valid and what the franchise is based on. It's cool to see that flipped on its head and have Japan be shown as the villains of the Second World War, which they were, if we're being realistic. They were part of the Nazi regime, and it is cool to see that being flipped around for a Godzilla movie. I just enjoy this movie, and since it's basically standalone, anyone can watch this, even if they're not a Godzilla fan and not have to know the lore, because it is a standalone movie. It acknowledges the events of a 1954 movie, and because of a joke, it acknowledges Godzilla 1998, but it's still a good film and I would highly recommend it. Now, the moment I said that the original was that far down, I knew that people would hate this, but number 9 is Godzilla 2014. I just really enjoy this film. I don't think it lived up to what it could have been. I will state that. There's not much Godzilla in this film. But the characters, especially Bryan Cranston's one, they're really good in my opinion. I know a lot of people take issue with Ford. I quite like him. He's that Hollywood protagonist we don't get enough of nowadays. Quite a soft, gentle, kind guy, compared to the overly buff, I'm going to punch this building kind of guy, which we get a lot of the moment for big action blockbusters, especially with the superhero genre boom that we've been having recently. I just enjoy this film. The production is truly outstanding. The Mutos, I think, are awesome. The gross mix of like different kinds of arachnids, insects, and arthropods. They make me cringe every time I see them, but I also love the fact it does that. And when we do finally get to see the fights, they're so well done. You can almost forgive the fact that they kept cock-teasing everyone with them, but the reason why it's this low is because
there's too many times that this film cuts away from the fights, and cuts away so abruptly it feels unnatural. So that's why it's this high, but yet this low. I love Ghidorah. This is the final part of the golden trilogy of the 60s, and it's just really fun. It's not the best, and you can tell that this one was quite rushed throughout production. Like, my god, this movie was made in something like 9 months compared to Mothra vs. Godzilla, but I enjoy it. I think it's great. The characters are fun. The spy plotline I find really, really funny in a so dumb it's fun kind of way. I have no complaints when it comes to that. King Ghidorah, he was awesome even just in this movie. Not acknowledging how much he affects the later franchise, just with this movie alone, you can tell they're a big threat. With having Mothra, Rodan and Godzilla all in the same film together finally, it's great and I love it, and I really can't complain for how much fun this movie really is. Number 7 is Mothra vs. Godzilla. I love this film. I love the original Mothra. If I'm being honest, if I included them, Mothra would probably be in my top 5 because it's just a really fun, family-friendly monster movie. There's no other way to say it. But with Mothra vs. Godzilla, the only reason why this isn't ranked in my top 5 itself is because of the final part where the 2 Mothra larvae defeat Godzilla by just covering him in silk. It's a bit dull and a bit anticlimactic, especially after seeing how dangerous Godzilla is in the previous 3 films. The fact he was defeated in this way is a bit naff, in my opinion. Everything else about this, the characters, even though they're basically just borrowed from Mothra, they're great. Mothra's great. The larvae, which were introduced in this film, are awesome as hell to see the way that Mothra continues the bloodline. And I just really enjoy this movie. It's just the other 6 films, I enjoy that a little bit more. Now, normally people would have a top 5 greatest ones. I'd have a top 6 just because I love and absolutely adore Godzilla vs. Ghidorah. I know it's going to be controversial to state because this is that movie in the Godzilla franchise where either you love it or you absolutely hate it. I adore this film. The production values for this one are awesome. The weird 1970s, trippy, psychedelic vibes. It's really, really up my street and I really enjoy it. The characters in this one, they are, openly I will state, they're quite stock characters. They're not overly interesting, but for what they do for the plot, they're perfectly tolerable and they don't take away from the film in general. Hedorah is awesome and the fights with Hedorah are, yes, I just love it. And the way they kill all the little Hedorahs as they keep trying to break apart and fly away. Even Godzilla flying because of his atomic breath, I love. It's one of those 1970s, this is so shit, I have to adore it kind of things. No, this is just a really well-made movie in my opinion. I get the criticism, but at the same time, I think people do need to give this one a second chance because it's a lot more fun than a lot of people give it credit for. Now, the return of Godzilla. This is how you bring a franchise back. Being a direct sequel to the original film, ignoring all the others, was probably the best move they could ever make to get the tone of this film so right. This is definitely a horror movie again. This goes so far back to what the original was meant to be, and it does it so damn well. The characters in this one, fun to watch throughout the film. The new design of Godzilla, I do enjoy, although I prefer the later Heisei designs of him. The little gross tick mites things, they're fucking gross, but they're done really damn well through the practical effects. And the overall destruction scenes, I really enjoy. I know some of the special effects nowadays are quite dated, but for the 1980s, even American productions with that kind of CGI and blue screen and green screen, it's pretty on par with it. So I can't slag off this film. It's just really good. And if you haven't watched any of the other ones and want to try and get into a franchise, this is a great way to start off, just to watch the Heisei era, then go back and forward, etc. Now, number 4 with Shin Godzilla, I think this movie is brilliant. I know, once again, this has got a very split fan base with it because a lot of people didn't like how many changes it made. But this film's not meant to be in any canon. This is a completely not a standalone Godzilla movie, something which will never get a sequel apparently. We won't get anything else of this timeline. It's just a one-off which doesn't acknowledge any of the other movies. And with that, it's great. I like the characters in this one, even though they're not the main focus of a film, but they all fill the roles that they're meant to do and fill the roles extremely well with a lot of charisma. I love Godzilla's design. I know it's controversial, but the fact that it changes throughout the movie and mutates and just gets grosser and grosser, I think it's really damn cool. I love the final design, the much more Godzilla style, the fact it splits its jaw, the new version of the atomic beam, just the fact it can split out of its back, and there's so much blood in this movie. I really enjoyed this one. I think it's in my top 4 for a reason, and I would highly recommend people watch it. And even the English dub of this one isn't horrific, which is something we don't get very often with these films. Starting off my top 3, this was really difficult because all 3 of these movies I love equally. There's just some parts of it which nudge them a little bit more or a little bit less. So Godzilla vs. Destroyer has to be third, just for the simple fact that the Bandai figures for the little destroyers, that is literally it. No other reason. That is the only reason, because it is distracting. They are really dirt cheap, and the weird part where the military is trying to blow them all up, and you can clearly see that some of them were grey screened on, not even fucking blue screened, grey screened, which was outdated back in the fucking 40s, for crying out loud. It's a bit naff. I do love everything else about this movie though. The conclusion to the Heisei era is done so well. The characters, especially with Mickey's arc ending, it's brilliant to see. Destroyer is terrifying, probably the most terrifying kaiju in the entire franchise, with the final fights, including Junior's fight with it. It's great to see, and I really adore this movie and would recommend it to everyone. Number 2, some people will state that this is recency bias, but Godzilla King of the Monsters was like my 3rd or 4th Godzilla movie I ever watched, so it can't even be from recency bias. I just enjoy this movie. I think it's great. I don't get the criticism of the characters. I really don't. I think they're perfectly fine. Some people have praised characters from previous Godzilla movies a lot more than people like Madison, and I don't understand why. They're perfectly adequate at what they do. I think there is some depth to them, even though if you watch the deleted scenes and the fan-made director's cut thing, it makes them a lot more bearable, seeing their personality shine through a lot more, especially for the sequence between Madison and Emma, where they're in the little corridor thing. The extended part of that, which adds another couple of minutes, really does flesh them out a bit better. The overall designs for all 4 of them, wow, is all I can say. They look great, and the new monsters, I'm very intrigued to see them in later installments. Hopefully there'll be like a Monarch TV show or something where we can see these creatures a lot more, because I love them, especially the design of Scylla. I think it's terrifying. It looks a lot like Kumonga and mixed with a bit of Biollante, which is completely awesome with me. I have no problems with it. The overall fights, I love them. I know some people complain that they cut away again, but I think it's kind of become the aesthetic of the Monsterverse to cut away, but it definitely doesn't move away from the action as much as a previous film does, which is a huge improvement. And overall, like I said, the production quality for this film had a fucking budget and wanted to show you its budget and show you it in a proud way. I love this one, but it doesn't take my number 1 spot because of one simple reason. It's not Godzilla vs. Biollante. There's no other way to say it. This movie does everything you want from a Godzilla movie and more. Characters, great. Introducing Mickey, awesome. All that kind of stuff. Introducing Godzilla's personality, amazing. The way that they designed Biollante and made her seem like a real living creature with all the movements. I have no idea how they did that in 1989. I'll never probably know, even though I've seen behind the scenes stuff for it. It looks incredible. It looks like it could be CGI, but it's not. It's all practical. That's how well made it is. It looks like modern day CGI. It's awesome. The fights, both of them, they are brief, I will state that, but they do everything you need them to do. They fill the role that they need to do in a Godzilla movie, and that's as much as you need for these films more than anything else. I just really enjoy this film. The production quality in this one is so damn high, and I am so disappointed that this film kind of bombed at the box office, because otherwise the rest of the Heisei movies could have been like this. But after this film they did go a lot more lighthearted until Godzilla vs. Destroyer. I'm so happy though that we got this film, because it's one of those one-in-a-kind Godzilla movies, and I really hope one day, if the Monsterverse continues, Biollante is introduced and is given the big $200 million budget screen she deserves. Thank you very much for watching. So yeah, if you agreed with me or disagreed with me, let me know in the comments. No one's going to comment, but hey ho. Oh well. So yeah, next month is Friday the 13th month, where I will only be covering stuff throughout the Friday the 13th franchise. I'm going to do a top 10 list. The Unmade series will be coming back with that, and a couple of little video essays about the TV show, which not many people really know about, and all the other video games, not including Friday the 13th video game from 2017. So yeah, be sure to check them out when they're released, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.